This is Keys to the Shop, live interviews from Coffee Fest in New York City, Part 1. Well, hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Keys to the Shop, where we give you insights, inspiration, and the tools you need to grow as a coffee service professional. My name is Chris DeFirio. I am your host for the show, founder of Keys to the Shop podcast and consulting. Keys to the Shop also does consulting and coaching for you and your coffee business, one-on-one sessions to give you clarity, tools, and freedom and joy in the process of owning and operating your coffee shop. I would love to talk with you about what it looks like to work with Keys to the Shop Consulting, whether you're just getting started in the coffee industry or you are established already, but you need to problem solve, take things to the next level, scale your business. Just kind of do a deep dive into what is so that we can build what will be. There's lots of clients I'm working with to do just that right now. And again, I'd like to talk with you and see how Keys to the Shop Consulting can help you. To set up a free discovery call with me, go ahead and email chris@keystotheshop.com. Now, I'm really excited about today's episode. We have another live interview series, this time from the show floor of Coffee Fest in New York City. Now, Coffee Fest is a 30-year-old trade show and really the epicenter of equipping and resourcing yourself and your team to run a thriving coffee shop, something that truly stands the test of time because it's based on best practices, well-researched due diligence, application of tools and systems. You can find all of this at Coffee Fest trade shows through the free or accessibly priced trainings, workshops, panel discussions, lectures, of which I participate as a presenter every Coffee Fest. And also there's things like the latte art competition. You can taste a wide selection of cold brew coffees. The trade show floor has a ton of great vendors that are there to interact with you. You have questions about chai concentrate, espresso extraction, cup manufacturing, and all that. This is the place to do it. Check them out at coffeefest.com for upcoming shows in Louisville, Kentucky, Anaheim, California, and Orlando, Florida. Coffeefest.com. Get 50% off your registration when you use the code KEYS at the registration time. Use the code KEYS. You get 50% off. Really good deal. Awesome people running the show, always providing great value. And I hope to see you at one of these shows. Again, check them out over at coffeefest.com. Earlier this month, in March of 2023, I got to have 5 interviews with presenters from the trade show that presented on a range of different topics. And we're going to have 2 episodes in this series. The first part is what you're listening to right now. This is part 1. And in order of appearance, we're going to be talking with Jordan Brown of Shoreline Supply. Then we're going to talk with Anand Patel of Hidden Grounds. And then in episode 2, part 2, we're going to be talking with Jesse Harriet of Copper Horse Coffee Roasters. Then we'll be talking with Jenna Gothelf of Counterculture Coffee, followed by Anu Menon of Drift Away Coffee. Now, to kick us off today, we're talking with Jordan Brown of Shoreline Supply. Jordan Brown has been on the distribution side of coffee for close to a decade now, and he's all about bringing great products to shops and just helping shops by connecting them with great tools to do their jobs well and to really support their cultures. Currently, he serves as the Vice President of Sales for Shoreline Supply Company, and he hosts a podcast called Drinking Coffee While Talking Coffee with Jordan Brown. So in this conversation with Jordan today, we're going to be talking about how he interacts with his clients to bring them the best products for their specific needs, and the dynamics of how a coffee shop can navigate making the right decision about what's available to them, which we all know is a lot. There's a lot available to us on the market, and so it's easy to get really congested and get decision fatigue. And people like Jordan are all about trying to help us make the right decisions because of having all these options. It has everything to do with the integrity of your business and knowing how to approach these decisions, how to navigate trends, how to edit and then be decisive at the same time. That's a real art. And Jordan breaks it down nicely for us here in this conversation as he explains what he does, what Shoreline does, how they navigate this conversation with clients. I think you're really going to learn a lot from this. So here's my conversation on the show floor of Coffee Fest New York City 2023 with Jordan Brown of Shoreline Supply Company. Okay, I'm here with Jordan Brown of Shoreline Coffee, and I am excited to talk to you. I heard your presentation a second ago in the conversation corner, and very dynamic, very awesome. Welcome.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about your company, what you all do.
So I'm the Vice President of Sales for Shoreline Supply. We have an office in California, Arizona. We're opening in Dallas in like the next 2 months.
Wow.
So basically, we are a one-stop shop for basically everything outside of avocados and bread and things like that. So cups, straws, napkins, oat milks, all that stuff. We are 100% the one-stop shop for that. No minimums, no fuel charges, anything like that. We're those guys, right? So we are we're the coffee guys who basically bring you top barista products. That's our goal, and that's what we're doing.
Okay. So how long have you been doing that?
I've been in coffee for close to a decade. I've been always selling in that world too, right? So so I've never been behind a bar. I've always sold products to people and just kind of gave them options and let them decide on what they wanted to do with those options. So I've been working for Shoreline for 3 years, and before that I worked for another distribution company.
All right. So what fascinates me about your perspective is the idea that you get to, and I know you do podcasting as well. And as a salesperson, you interact with people in a very niche way where, as a product representative, you have to field their needs with what your company supplies. And it'd be easy to just say, you should buy this because I want you to buy it. And harder to say, this is what you probably should get because of your business, what your business needs. How do you balance that? And what have you learned over the years of being in sales that creates a win-win?
It's kind of tough because the salesperson in you wants to make more money. And so when I'm overseeing my sales team, they want to sell stuff that's going to make them more money. So something that we're buying for less and selling for more excites them. What I've made very clear with Shoreline is our job is to put things in front of shops and let them decide. I have no longer, at one point in my career I will be honest, like I was pushing stuff that benefited me more. I haven't done that for probably 5 years. I now am here to bring stuff in front of you and you decide, you let me know. You know what I mean? So I think it starts from the top though, right? So what I mean by that, I think it starts from the products that we're bringing on, and we're not just taking everything. We're at Coffee Fest here. There's 1,000 products to choose from. I'm not bringing on all these products. I'm going to bring on specific ones that make sense, right? So for me, I think also noticing what the shop's needs are. Not all shops are created equal. Not all shops are required to carry the same stuff. So there might be a shop that's closer to the beach in California that really is more health focused and might need something with less sugar content. So I'm going to bring you this oat milk. Has less sugar. There might be a shop that's like, hey, dude, like this is a really health conscious area. We don't want any alternative milks, right? We don't want nuts. My kid has allergies, so I got to now think about that. They're an allergen shop. I got to be focused on that. So I think adapting to the culture of the shop is very important too. But I'm not gonna lie, it's hard, man, because you have relationships with people who are creating products, and it's like you want to see them be successful. But not every shop can do every product. You know what I mean? There's 100 oat milk companies, and they don't all fit in the same shop, you know? You mentioned I want to stock and put in front of them stuff that makes sense. Stuff that works, right? And I imagine over the years that changes, that product mix changes. I want to dive into that a little bit and ask, how do you know what makes sense? Yeah, man, that is a great question. Okay, so when I bring on a product and we're filtering through it, there are questions that I'd ask a manufacturer about, right? How is it doing in other markets? What have we seen? What is the feedback been from shops that you're working with? And again, something in New York might not make sense in LA or Texas, Arizona, or wherever. But what I will say is this. If I'm seeing it work somewhere, so I have certain shops that I can do testing through, right? Hey, let me bring this product to you and just give me feedback on what your customer is saying. Shops I respect. I take it to a ton of different baristas that are in my network as well, have them play around with it, even if that shop won't carry it. some of the top shops I work with, I'll give it to the baristas knowing that they won't carry that product and just give me feedback on it.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I then take that information, and I really put numbers behind it. Is this something that's going to make the shop more money? Is this something that can make sense for this shop? When I say make sense, I'm talking about dollars and actually just practicality, right?
Yeah.
If you look at a new oat milk or a new alternative milk or custom cups or whatever that could be, if I'm thinking in the back of my mind, hey, this is a shop that probably can benefit from this, I'm going to filter through it, but it's really asking questions. Every customer I work with, they're not just a customer, they're friends. And I'm not just saying that. They're friends with my wife, they're friends with my son. Like, we're in there, and I'm trying to understand what they're standing for, and that's what my whole presentation was now. Like, I know the culture of all the shops I work with. I know what it makes sense. I have so many different shops, but I know why this would match up with what their values are and what their customer base is. But it takes a while to dig deep into that. I can't have those answers on day one when I'm meeting with a shop. It takes me a bit.
So you have talked about this in the affirmative.
Yeah.
That is, you know what makes sense for them.
Yeah.
What about when you have to basically tell somebody that what they want is going against their brand? Because as a salesperson, now you've just talked about your friends, you know their culture and all this other stuff, right? And that's very valuable because you can get them to make decisions that benefit their culture. And I imagine part of it is getting them to not make decisions that damage their culture.
Yeah.
What does that look like?
So I'll give you an example. I have a shop in Santa Monica that is very health focused, very recyclable focused, very environmental focused. And he wanted to get very, very expensive, custom, made from the earth, biodegradable. You drop it, it builds a tree basically type of cup.
Right.
And I told him, dude, you should not do this. And I know what he wanted to do. And I'm talking about $50,000 worth of custom cups. For him, it built a value, right? He saw the value in that. For me, this is a huge mistake. Don't do it. Why, Jordan? Because we can sell you ones that aren't custom, that are still eco, that you don't have to put $50,000 in front of, right? There's also a side of things, too, when it comes to that same shop, using as an example, everything's organic except 3 SKUs, right? Why aren't these 3 SKUs organic? Well, I don't like the other SKUs. Now I'm on the opposite of that one. So you mean to tell me that everything that you stand for, you're pushing these 2 almonds away, almond and oat milk, not being organic because you don't like the taste. So now you're going against your culture for that, right?
Right.
So this is what I did. I said, hey, listen, dude, you basically have an opportunity. If you really don't like the taste of these, what I would do, because what matches up with the culture of your shop, what I would suggest is you bringing on the non-organic almond milk and the organic almond milk and just upcharge more for the organic.
Yeah.
Jordan, it's not the best of both worlds, right? You got your one that you think tastes better, even though it doesn't. The other organic one tastes better, but he's thinking the customers aren't going to think that. And then on the opposite end, he's also meeting the needs of what his culture of his shop is and that. So, again, it's tough conversations, and sometimes we lose money over it. But it's just one of those things. But you're asking such a good question, because then you get to figure out the authenticity of the shop too. Oh, so you don't really believe that? You know what I mean? Like, you're eco, you care about green, but you don't want to spend a little bit more money for that. You know what I mean? So it's like you have that side of things.
There's fear in this too. People don't want to miss out.
Yeah.
And also people, it feels like, and you tell me, but having that big of a swing towards something that's a value, like that $50,000 worth of these overly wrought cups, like you can have a cheaper version, like that feels like you're trying to prove your values.
Yeah.
So there's like an insecurity in trying to prove your values versus the security of like faithfully walking it out, those values where you can. So it's like not making decisions out of urgent, not desperation, right? Fully informed of even your own motives. And that's what I'm really interested in, like the typical psychology of how owners and operators make decisions about the products that they put in their stores. What have you seen really is the driving force behind people's decisions one way or another?
Yeah, I think it's what they like, to be honest. Like straight up, like I have a shop that it's actually my first ever customer that I got. And I will meet with this shop and I will ask them questions. There was times where I thought they weren't doing well. And it was my misconception. I felt something that maybe I'm like, are they struggling? And then I sat down with them and said, listen, if you guys are struggling, I got 5 things that we're going to have to do very quickly. We're going to have to drop the coffee roaster you're working with. We're going to have to go private label. We're going to have to get rid of this almond milk they're using. We're going to have to go cheaper. We're going to have to do a couple things here, right? And in that, they're like, we don't want to do that. And I'm like, well, why though? I don't understand why. Because this is their value. I mean, like, one of the only shops that doesn't really want to serve alternative milk. They're like, no, cappuccinos with regular milk. And I'm like, all right, but this is where they stand. This is what it was like. Almost what's so unique about this, on a side note, is that this shop isn't who their values aren't their customers. So their values are premium, very top of the line, minimalistic. Their customers are moms with kids who like the vibe of the shop. So then what do? Now you're in a spot where you have your customer base might not be who you want to cater to, but we're going to deal with it, and in that educate, right? So it's one of those things where I think when they're making a decision, it's, can it make us money? Does it match up with core values? And what does this look like if I'm putting this on my shelf or implementing something for us as a culture of the shop? And if we open a second shop, can it transfer over? You know what I mean?
This is you talking, but not the typical owner.
Yeah, no. I think a typical owner will tell me straight up, Jordan, don't ever bring anything in here that doesn't match up with what I'm telling you. And if we are going to implement something, it has to hit these things that we're looking for. It could be cheap. It could be organic. It could be something that nobody else has. I have shops that tell me they don't want to be but selling the same thing as someone down the street, right? So when I see something get implemented and make a true change, what I feel like I've noticed the most is it just depends on the product. I did a matcha tasting with somebody. I wasn't there. I just sent them 3 samples. They gave me feedback on all 3 of them. The third one they liked, right? So sometimes it's not that complicated. But other ones are like, we got to talk about this as a team. Like, how are we presenting this to our customers? What will our customer feedback be? You know what I mean? So it kind of depends. When someone does make it, it's usually to have a successful launch of a product that someone's investing in. What I've seen from shop owners is getting the team to buy into it, and then having the team present that to the consumer, right?
Right.
From a co-branding standpoint, something like that.
Well, the opposite would be the opposite, right?
Yeah.
An unsuccessful launch of something would be, hey, we're just going to put this in place, and then we're not going to do any of that team, values, culture. And I'll tell you, here at Coffee Fest, it's easy to do that because nothing against sales, because you're a sales guy, right?
Yeah.
But the pressure is on because you're going to miss out. And if you don't get on this train now, I don't know, your customers are secretly wanting this thing, and if you don't have it, they're not going to come back to your shop. And so there's, again, this fear that promotes urgency, that promotes quick decisions, that alienates people. In the process, you don't realize you're doing that, and you blame it on the product.
Yeah.
But it was, from what I hear you saying, it's the launch of it, the taking your time enough to make sure those things are in place, right?
Yeah. I mean, if someone is sitting down with you and saying you should try this new alternative milk, and they're telling you 3 facts about it, versus like, hey, try this alternative milk, and they walk away, I'm going to be way more invested with the 3 facts, right? That's just obvious, right? So what we're seeing is, I mean, I had a shop that launched an alternative milk for a week. It didn't really hit, and I'm like, well, how are you like talking about it? Was this like something you were actually like presenting? Was this something you were having conversations with? Did your staff even know about it? Were they just like, oh, it's a new thing we're trying out? It needs to start from the top, and when it does start from the top, I see major success from it. But when it's just on the shelf and just going for it, it usually won't do well. You know what I mean? So
yeah. So okay, one of the last things I want to talk about here is what the typical owner should do when they're looking at their menu right now. They're looking at their products, their retail, and they feel this probably needs to change. Something in me tells me this needs to change. We need to update. Maybe we've grandfathered in a lot of stuff, but then they go online and they look at what's available and like, my God, there's so much stuff. How do you advise them to take the first steps in creating the groundwork for good decisions amidst all of the options that they have, that can just make them stay with what they know? I'd rather, it's the devil you know, right? So how do we go forward?
So I think there's multiple levels to it. I think there's a shop that I had in Long Beach that didn't bring oat milk on for like a year and a half until like there was like did not want a part of it. Didn't want Oatly, didn't want any oat milk company. Then finally did it, right? Because they knew that the customers were requesting that. But when I look at a shop that is saying, okay, it's time, and I told this to the people at the end of my presentation, this is the hardest thing to do. When I look at a shop and they say it's time, it's really eating an elephant is one bite at a time. I'm not looking for the John Taffer bar rescue coming in and we're going to tear this whole place up. We're not looking for that. We're going to start very small. And it's like usually I'm looking at sizes of cups. I'm looking at alternative milks. We're going to go small and just kind of chip away and kind of see where we can land. And when it is time to do that, there's so many reports you can pull. I mean, I just pulled a Grubhub report that showed top coffee that was delivered across the country and what the top alternative milks were and what the top coffees were. It's like, if you're not great at those top coffee drinks, and if you're also not serving any of these top 5 of the alternative milks, that might be a place to start, right? So I think it's slowly but surely. I think it is really focusing in on what's obtainable. Because it could get overwhelming, right? You're like, if you look at my presentation, I talk about merch, I talk about alternative milk. So it's like, oh my gosh, we have no merch, we have no alternative, we don't have it. It's like, okay, let's slow down, right? We'll slow down a little bit. And if we're starting small, we're going to get there eventually. This is a long-term game plan, I'm hoping. If it is an urgency level, it's like we're probably going to have to look at what's going to be the highest quality that can bring people in, and we're probably going to have to heavily research and call someone like you, Chris, to ask them, hey, this is what I'm doing. What's the move that I can do, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. I like that because here's the thing. When people make quick decisions, it's because of that fear sometimes, but it's also because they know if they don't do it, right now, they're going to forget about it.
Yeah.
And so if you're going to make a change, I suppose you have to have a system or at least be dedicated long-term to it, and don't treat it like all right, for today and tomorrow we're going to think about our menu. I'm not going to think about it for another 360, 2 days.
Yeah.
Right? So it needs to be kind of like a lifestyle change almost in the way you treat your business.
Yeah. I mean, it's the same thing as with our own health. Right? Like everybody's like, we're gonna get up tomorrow. Yeah. We're juicing tomorrow. We're gonna go juice, buy all this juice. I always call my friends at Little West Juice. Send me some juice. I'm doing juice cleanse, and then I'm gonna go to the gym. And then the next day, you're like, I kind of burnt out. It's like, let's go slow.
Yeah.
Let's just have salmon for dinner tonight. You know what I mean? Like, let's just start there.
Yeah.
So I think like slowly, let's just hit and no, it's a process, man. And here's the worst part: your customers are probably gonna hate you at first. Sometimes customers push back.
Yeah.
What happened to the 17 alternative milks you used to have? Oh, we're consolidating. I'm not coming back. But you might get someone else who could come in, right? So
true.
It's just being patient, but really, it's making small decisions, but standing behind them.
Yeah.
You have to.
Love it.
Yeah.
Jordan, great to talk to you.
Thank you, Chris. Finally.
Appreciate what you do. Where can we learn more about Shoreline and in your podcast too?
Yeah, so Drinking Coffee While Talking Coffee, Jordan Brown's the name of my podcast. You can just find me on Instagram. I'm Jordan Brown. I kind of post everything on there. My son has an Instagram account called Stone's Coffee Crawl. We just go to coffee shops as a family and we post on there. And then ShorelineSupplyCo.com. So California, Arizona, and launching Dallas in a couple months. So we're super excited. But dude, Chris, thanks so much for having me, man. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Yeah, thanks, dude.
Well, I hope that you really enjoyed that one. I really, like I said, Jordan has such great energy and passion for what he does. That's the kind of thing you really want to see in someone who is hoping to just bring you the right things and help you make the right decisions in the process. And making decisions is one of the major things that running an operation is all about. And so there's a lot of fear and maybe uncertainty that comes with that. But when you have good people around you and you have a basis and value set on which to make those decisions, it becomes a lot easier. So I'm thankful for people in the industry like Jordan. If you want to stay in touch with Jordan, what he's doing, look him up on Instagram. I am Jordan Brown, and also subscribe to his podcast, Drinking Coffee While Talking Coffee with Jordan Brown. And then also check out the company Shoreline Supply Co. at ShorelineSupplyCo.com. Now, we are going to get into our second interview in this series, in part one of these live interviews. And we're going to be talking with the founder of Hidden Grounds Coffee, Anand Patel. Anand is the co-founder of Hidden Grounds Coffee. Back in 2013, Anand and his team decided that they had suffered enough bad coffee, and they took it upon themselves to become the ultimate taste testers and taste all kinds of coffees, including bad ones, in order to provide something great for their guests and for the general public. And as a result of this process, they were able to expand their coffee business to 7 retail locations today. Hidden Grounds started in New Jersey. Now they have their 7th location located in Brooklyn, which is brand new, just opened this year, right before Coffee Fest, New York City. So Anand is doing a wonderful job with Hidden Grounds. And in our conversation with Anand, we're going to be talking about scaling and the story, a little bit of how Hidden Grounds came to be and what has guided the decisions for how to establish the first store and then take that and scale it in a responsible way to 7 locations. It is not an easy task. From back in 2013 till today, Anand has been building conscientiously and with passion. And so at Coffee Fest, he talked about this on a panel about scaling your business. And I'm glad to have gotten a chance to sit with him at my booth and have this conversation for you. So here now is the co-founder of Hidden Grounds Coffee talking about scaling, Anand Patel. Okay, I'm here with Anand Patel of Hidden Grounds Coffee, now in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Headquartered in New Jersey.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct.
Welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me, man.
And so I wanted to talk to you about what you're going to talk about on the panel tomorrow, which is scaling your business.
Sure.
Tell me a little bit about your first iteration of your business and your plans for it when you first opened.
Sure. Yeah. So I guess for the purpose of this entire conversation, I want to essentially acknowledge that there's a lot of fluff that I've gotten used to. Speaking out loud. However, whenever there is a preface of people potentially listening to this as, hey, I can hold on to this and apply it to myself and my experience, I also like to kind of allow myself to be a little bit more vulnerable, a little bit more transparent in my responses. So I'll be completely honest for the purposes of what this conversation is going to be about.
Please do.
So let me just start off by saying that there was absolutely no plan besides essentially just one day I woke up and for whatever reason I had an entire tour of my life for the next 45 years, my professional years, and it went through in a flash. And one takeaway was that everything was predictable. Like I could imagine what the next 45 years of my professional life was going to be.
Oh, wow.
Because at the time I was working for Johnson & Johnson as a business analyst. And I've never liked predictability on that kind of like assurance. So I quickly realized no, if that is the case, I'm not going to grow as a person. I'm probably going to have a lot of health conditions because I'm not going to be on my feet. I'm not going to be doing things with my hands or my mind. And so I realized the importance of engaging myself in a journey which kind of challenged me in a lot of those areas that I wasn't being challenged in.
Yeah.
And business just happened to be one of the options. It could have been anything for that matter. The good thing was that my business partner, my friend at the time, drank lots and lots of coffee. And if you come from a world where you are not used to drinking coffee and you taste it for the first time, it's almost like drinking beer for the first time. You're kind of looking at it from a perspective of why do people drink this?
You have to get used to it.
Exactly. You have to get used to it in order for you to fall in love with it, right? And so there was this logic of well, if it tastes like this, you have to drink lots of it. People drink it in billions. There's a ridiculous amount of consumption. There is something here that I may be missing, and I need to dive into it. And that's what kind of brought me to the coffee world.
Okay. And you're a business analyst, and so this is naturally your mind is just analyzing all this stuff, right? So, okay, now you get into the coffee business.
Yeah.
And you
start this business as a way of, you say you don't know what you're doing necessarily, you want to be a part of it.
Yeah.
You open your first shop.
Yeah.
And the concept of the first shop, because I know you have different, there's some Indian culture,
correct,
kind of mixed in with the traditional coffee culture that like a third wave coffee bar would have.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I know you opened in 2013.
Yeah.
How did that first shop go? Like your analysis of it?
Yeah.
Versus the reality of it?
Yeah, sure. Well, so the analysis was simply around, questioning the fundamentals of everything. I think that was one of the advantages that I had because I came from a non-coffee background. I wasn't settling at just accepting, let's say, the ratios that were published, by SCA. I was challenging them in my own head. It was like, oh wait, why?
Yeah.
So I was challenging everything. I was challenging why people tamp the way they do, why people distribute the grounds that they do. Why does the water have to be taken to a certain temperature? Right? I was questioning each and every fundamental thing that I was coming across in order for me to understand it a little bit better. So the first store, frankly, the first Google search that I made was like how to open up a coffee shop, not necessarily having anybody around me.
Yeah.
That was my first Google search. We opened it, and we were so engulfed in the process of opening it that we forgot to let people know, the community know, that our opening date is this date.
Oh, yeah.
We just thought we would open up the door one day and people would start coming in, and obviously that was not the case. So the first 4 hours on that first day, nobody really walked in. And so we questioned everything about all of the times that we spent on building this first store. I had my ex-manager on speed dial to call him and beg for my job back because I'm like, what the heck did I do here?
Yeah.
And I still remember the first ever customer walking in. I was so dumbfounded by the fact that she said, here's $2, can I please have a drip coffee? It was just such a surreal moment for me that I asked her instinctively, are you sure? Are you sure you want to give us your $2?
Wow.
To which she responded confidently, yes, I'm pretty sure, and yeah. And so
the more you ask, the less sure I am, I think.
And then, every single day it was just another moment of just finding myself in a completely uncharted territory.
Yeah.
For pretty much the first, I would say, 3 years of running that store. I just found myself in these situations where I'm just like, wow, this is not what I'm supposed to be doing. But if I engage in it, it's also one of the most exciting endeavors that I've ever taken on. And looking back on it now, after those 3 years, we reflected on all of the different problems that we had solved, that we could make an entire list, of 1,000 rows in an Excel sheet. And so at that point, it was a matter of the question of scaling came simply due to the fact that we thought we got lucky with the first store becoming a success.
Oh.
So now we had to test out whether or not it's something that we're actively doing, or is it just we got lucky? And the only way truly to test that is to attempt to recreate a second one with some of the fabric that you think you have figured out. And then the second one, was supported by the community really well.
Because now they're familiar with your brands.
Yeah.
People were, giving you $2 all over the place.
Right.
So
multiple times over throughout the day. And yeah, I mean, the second one, was supported by the community. So that now we had this a bit of a reassurance in our own abilities.
Yeah.
And so we wanted to test it out the second time around by opening a third location. And so that's essentially, what's been going on.
So, and here we are. Right?
Yeah.
Okay, so a little bit more on that, though. In testing it out to see, first, was this a fluke? Let's try a second store, and then a third store. Take us through maybe, because as you start to scale, I think a lot of people will feel like, by the time you're at 4 stores or something, you're probably going to be pretty confident.
Right.
What's the amount of confidence that you've gained over the period of time? Maybe a better way to ask this would be, what was the first scaling effort like compared to this last one where you've just opened the shop in Brooklyn?
Yeah. I think the one thing about confidence is my confidence is simply associated with the things that I have experienced.
Yeah.
And what I mean to say is, if there has been a problem in the past that have arisen and we have figured out a solution that we know still works, the end result and the byproduct of that is then my confidence. But every single day, even after 7 stores, I'm very much insecure, and the self-doubt is completely on my forefront, that it never allows me to get so comfortable also in my methodologies that have been established. Okay. So yes, I do have best practices now, and we have methodologies, and we have processes, and we have documentation that are extremely detailed, but there is also an equivalent force within me that questions whether or not it's going to be valid for another day, another week, another month, another year. So that's the first thing. That part of me has not changed. It's just now we have a more and more collection of things that we have figured out, and our best practices keeps on increasing. And that's the big difference between, let's say, opening a 7 store and opening a second store, is that your database of methodologies and best practices is simply a lot more by the time you get to the 7 store than you have in the second store.
Yeah. How do you make sure that all of those things that all the methodologies and the best practices, when you look at the word best, obviously that's compared to the rest.
Right.
So what were you using to determine best practices? How did those evolve so that you feel comfortable with them?
Yeah. Well, that's really where my IT background kind of came into place, right? Because there's something called the KPIs, right? I think we kind of understood the importance of KPIs. So it's not just about establishing best practices based off of your own subjective interpretation of whether or not the solution had worked out.
Yeah.
It's essentially based off of KPIs that we've established that are rooted in the business fundamentals, right? I mean, the top of that is obviously your net income and your revenue. Essentially, we do measure ourselves. Our KPIs are based off of that. There is a lot of other, business jargons that I don't want to bore you with, but another one is employee satisfaction. Another one is employee career satisfaction.
How do you measure that? I mean, I know like key performance indicators for your cost of goods or your profitability and your revenue daily, the product mix, all that stuff is it's part of it. But then when you say, I want my baristas to be happy, and you say, is it as simple as being like, Anand, are you happy?
Right.
Yes,
right.
good. KPI done.
Well, the number one thing is, if you're going to put some sort of a objective evaluation around happiness, you have to approach it with a very realistic approach. It cannot be a rosy picture of what we imagine happiness to be, right? So we are very familiar with what makes us happy on a day-to-day basis from a standpoint of, I know that every single day I'm good at my job, not because I'm happy, but people depend on me.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
So there are other words like being content. There are other words like, was I fulfilled today? There are other words like, do I feel confidence within my own skills? So it's a combination, like happiness could be parsed down to multiple different feelings that fall under the same umbrella that we also measure, right? Yeah. And that's what I mean. The KPIs are kind of comprehensive to include a bunch of different descriptors for good feelings, so to speak, right? Yeah. Competence is one of them. Do our baristas feel like they're competent?
Is this a survey you're doing?
This is primarily a survey that gets sent out, but all of our management is also very much in tune of asking the right questions. We give them those prompts of measuring it from multiple descriptor perspectives, not just, are you happy today? So our managers are also now kind of constantly getting the messaging from the leadership team to understand whether or not the employee is engaged in multiple facets.
Okay. And that's the big thing that people worry about when they're scaling is that, first of all, if you have one store and you're about to scale, you're thinking, my first store is not going to get all the love. I'm not going to be there, so we have to have a manager there. But then if, it's still like everyone's excited about the new baby.
Yeah.
But then you get all these other stores. Obviously you can multiply these systems. You can multiply your best practices. How do you scale with these things and have them actually be full of life and not simply placeholders that are in place of culture?
Sure. Yeah. I think as a business owner myself, right, as sort of the head of the snake, so to speak, I think I really had to introspect in the things that I was doing and not doing. First of all, there was a lot of understanding what I'm good at and what I'm not good at.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I was absolutely not good at all was understanding the concept of implicit and explicit, right? And when it comes to communication.
Yeah.
I made the assumptions that people understand your ethos simply based off of the amount of time that they have spent with you. So I made the assumption that implicitly, because we're spending time together, that you're also going to understand my ethos.
You're just
right?
rubbing off on them. That's it.
Right, exactly. So I had to kind of course correct from that standpoint.
Okay.
And I had to learn better ways of communicating my ethos to not only my managers, but also to my staff. Because ultimately, what I had to make them understand was, what do we really stand for as a company? Why are we doing this? What is the day-to-day adding up to, let's say, a year down the line, 2 years down the line? And once I saw that there was a beginning of some sort of a mental engine into that direction, at that point, the secondary effort was ensuring that those ethos are now captured in some sort of documentation, so that if I am not there or my business partner is not able to physically be there, how is the ethos being communicated through just a bunch of paper?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so that was sort of like a fundamental learning that I had to do as we were scaling up, because it wasn't so much that our baristas weren't good. It was just that we failed at communicating exactly what we expected out of them.
I like that, first of all, you've been kind of hinting at self-awareness as one of the constants that you have as a way of guiding your decisions. Right? And that's good, because having a realistic view of humanity means that you're not going to fault your baristas necessarily for what could be the fault of having this implicit assumption about what you've communicated.
Right.
It's not that they're bad baristas, that they're not following a protocol necessarily the way that you want them to or a manager does. It's maybe a system issue that wasn't properly cultivated and grown. It was just kind of shoehorned in there as a placeholder.
Yeah.
And it's got to be stressful, even in light of the fact that you've got all of these stabilizing forces of relationships and well curated processes and best practices. But now you've got a store in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
And you live in Jersey?
Yeah.
Okay. So at night you're going to bed what's the store doing?
Right.
So how do you, even in the midst of having that kind of a confidence?
Yeah.
Well, what is that like? Because there's still that sense of uncertainty.
Yeah.
And how do you keep that in check?
You use the word stressful, right? And for me, I think I've actually thought a lot about the word stress, weirdly enough.
Okay,
I've thought a lot about that. It's what does it take for me to feel stressful? And for me, it's two parts. Number one, whether or not I have made the best effort to make the unknowns knowns. So if there is an unknown, that's usually the pathway for me to become stressful.
Okay.
so my effort then goes into making those unknowns known.
Yeah.
That's number one. Number two is trust. That's really where I was born, with this characteristic of just trusting humanity, of just trusting human beings. You don't have to earn my trust. Like, even though I may be the owner of the company, you don't have to earn my trust. I am intrinsically a person that will trust human beings, because I also am guided by the philosophy that everybody was born good. So if I am doing that proactively, I'm already increasing the probability that this person is going to, more so than not, do right by us.
Right.
And then number two is also, we also lead with human decisions rather than putting the business up front, because that's just who we are fundamentally as people. I was not born to be a business person. I was born as a human, and I think just the way that I've grown up, I've grown up in a very tight-knit community of people where you couldn't survive without that community, right? So I kind of also understand the importance of, if I want to do anything about my dreams, I am going to need a village and a community around me. And then I guess the third part is, whenever your employees are expressing concerns and they want you to just listen to their, let's say, personal losses, my job is simply to listen in those scenarios and to try to do everything in my power to figure out whether or not this job can support them somehow in those situations.
Okay.
And that's the only kind of a barrier that I'm willing to cross when it comes to, business professional kind of personal life, right? It's, if someone tells me their kid is sick and I need to take off for the next 5 days, I mean, at that point, we put on the table, sure, we're going to be closed down the store if we can't find anybody else to cover that shift. Like, we go to that length, which I hope is one of the fundamental reasons why we're earning loyalty of our employees as well.
Right. Okay.
So I think from that perspective, I think we operate more as humans than business owners, really, if I were to boil it down to that.
That's interesting, that binary of business versus human, because business itself is simply it's a natural thing that humans do. It's almost like a product of humanity that gets isolated and divorced from its life. So I enjoy hearing you talk about that, and I've got a friend who runs a shop in North Carolina.
Okay.
At Waynesville, I think, called Orchard Coffee.
And
his family lives above the shop, and they run it, and they'll shut it down sometimes because the family needs a break.
Of course.
And so somebody here might be like, no, how much money could we have made that day?
Right.
And so if you're playing for something a little bit bigger than the transaction, it feels like even when you're expanding, you're not expanding to the degree that you're building on sand. You're actually building on something a lot more structurally sound than anybody else. Because it's not super quick.
Right. No, it has taken us 10 years to build 7 stores, which, people, now I look at, the resources that are available. I mean, of course, you take the example of Blank Street. I mean, they've expanded to like hundreds of locations at this point in a very short period of time. But, they're guided by their own principles and they're guided by their own philosophies. If that is your dream, then I support that dream. It's just my dream is not that. I'm more guided by 2 things. Number one, when I'm on my deathbed, I want to reflect back on these really great memories that I'm able to make with all sorts of different people. And if I do that and then conclude I've led the best life that I possibly have, I can die peacefully. Like, that's number one. And number 2 is I want to be excellent at what I take on. And I'm willing to spend a ridiculous amount of time in the pursuit of that. So those 2 things excite me just as a human being so much that if I get that through expansion, because I have something unique to offer, then let's do it. But simply expanding for the sake of expansion, and to say that now we have 10 locations in New York City, it's just not something that has been a motivating factor for me. You know, and I'm lucky because I have a business partner who's motivated not by those things either. We're truly motivated, frankly, by the chase of excellence and being able to create a lot of great memories in doing whatever it is that we're doing. And that's simply the pursuit here, you know.
I love that. I resonate so much with that, and I'm glad we got to talk about this because, you know, we motivate ourselves through aspirations, and our aspirations are sometimes just, we run on fumes and we try to shoot for things that don't give us fulfillment until we find out too late. And we burn out, and what you're talking about and we've talked about here is just, I feel like it's life-giving. Is it giving people permission to maybe take an inventory and analyze a little bit about what they're doing and how they're expanding, or even how they're just running their current shop. So I really appreciate you sitting down with me.
Not a problem at all.
Where can we learn more about Hidden Grounds? Tell us where to go on like Instagram and
Of course. Yeah,
online.
of course. If you go on our website, thehiddengrounds.com, you know, I guess if you're trying to figure out, you know, where our locations are, obviously we have that information on there. If you are attempting to learn more about us, you can find an extremely glorified version of our or origin story on our website. But if you truly would like to speak to me directly, then you could just email it to me at thehiddengrounds@gmail.com.
All right.
Man.
Again, great to talk to you.
Of course, man. Yeah, you got it.
All right, everybody. Well, I hope that you enjoyed that conversation with Anand. There's a lot to be learned from his example, and the way that we approach our values throughout the process of building our businesses beyond the four walls of our original store is so integral to doing it well, and to know that there's something stable that you've built and not just something that has been a quick grab for opportunity. So big thank you to Anand, and if you want to stay in touch with him and what's going on at Hidden Grounds, it's as simple as going to their website, thehiddengrounds.com. Also check them out on Instagram at Hidden Grounds Coffee. And with that, that is the end of part 1 of our live interview series from Coffee Fest in New York City. And I would encourage you to listen to part 2 as we have 3 more interviews coming up. Jesse Harriet of Copper Horse Coffee, then Jenna Gotthealth of Counterculture Coffee, followed by Anu Menon of Driftaway Coffee. So that's going to be a really great one, and I will see you on the next episode. Thank you so much, everybody. Don't forget to check out coffeefest.com for more information about these wonderful shows, where you can hear these kinds of presenters live for yourself at the upcoming shows. So again, coffeefest.com. Thank you so much, and as always, I hope that this episode has truly given you keys to the shop.